So the way to compete with these massive behemoth fitness apps is to compete on the fringes. You see, if you try to play their game, if you try to compete with them on ad spend, if you try to compete with them on marketing the same types of messages that they're marketing, if you try to compete with them on production quality, I have people who I know that are trying to build up, membership sites, and they advertise that they're going to give their clients, a whole bunch of streaming workouts and whatever it is. It's like, you're going to have your shirt handed to you, man. You cannot possibly compete with the Pelotons of the world, with the Beachbodies of the world, with the Les Mills of the world on streaming programs. I mean, these are billion-dollar companies that have trainers all around the world who are all very good looking, very charismatic people with professional film crews, creating way more content, way higher quality than anything you could hope in heck to do. And the reality of it is, if you try to play their game, you will lose. So don't, because you don't need to play their game. You see, as there's more big players that are coming in, dominating these kinds of markets, particularly on the low end with memberships, with streaming, with a lot of like group fitness type apps and stuff like that, the value of being small, personal, connecting at a much deeper level becomes greater. And that's where you've got to hang your hat. Tell you a story about Carolina Balmares. She's a level 1, level 2 graduate with our Online Trainer Academy, and since then she's become a co-host on our podcast, The Online Trainer Show. And Carolina is now she's together with an amazing man, but at the point she was a single with 3 kids in Canada, Mexican expat mother who had relocated to Canada. And so she was a member of a Facebook group that was for basically Mexican women who had relocated in Canada or the United States, who were single, who had at least 1 kid. And this was like a pretty big Facebook group, like a few thousand people who all shared this commonality, right? We call it uncommon commonalities, who all shared this 1% uniqueness about them. And so Carolina was in this group, and she was a member of the group. This was her, right? And she interacted with people, she made connections in that group, did all the stuff that you would do normally when you're in a group like that. And then one day she told her story. And her story, of course, is about how, she had a daughter in Mexico very, very young, at 16 years old, and then met a man actually on the internet, moved to Canada for him, had 2 more kids, and then divorced that man, and now she's single with 3 kids in Canada. And how what got her out of that was she found fitness. And she found fitness, and it changed her life, and this is why, and this is how it helped her out of her pregnancy, and that's why she does this now as a living. And she offered a presentation that she was going to give for anybody who was interested. She had 800 responses in the comments of people entering in their emails wanting to attend and pay for this webinar. Think about that for a second. One post in one Facebook group generated 800 leads, who then paid her over $1,000 to host a webinar and then filled her clientele. Now, if you do something one time, cool, you might have gotten lucky. But if it works a second time, there's something there, right? So she did it a second time and worked just the same. She had hundreds of comments, she filled a webinar. This time she charged a couple bucks more even for the webinar than she did the first time, and filled her clientele again, and now her business is rolling because that was her initial clientele, and then referrals take over. So think about that in terms of how you compete with the big apps. There is no way that a big app is going to be able to appeal to Mexican expat single mothers living in Canada or the United States. Now, this doesn't have to be just you. In Carolina's case, it was her story, which is great. What if you are not your client avatar? Ren Jones, again, level 1 and level 2 graduate. He's actually another one of the hosts of our podcast, funny enough. But he trains women, usually women, a little bit later on, kids have moved out, kind of that age range. And of course, he's not a woman, so he's clearly not his avatar. Well, he tells his story, and his story is all about how, 3 women in his life have died, his mother and 2 of his sisters. And while they didn't die necessarily from inactivity, the inactivity certainly contributed to it. And so this is why he's passionate about what he's doing, and he tells that story, and he participates in groups and tells that story, and this is why he does, and his content is all surrounded around that. And again, this is why people sign up for him. So how do you compete with big business apps? The reality of it is you don't play their game. You understand that there is a game that you can play that they can't. And this is on the fringes. This is how you start building up. This is why people buy you and not somebody else. And then from there, it starts to roll. And from there also, by the way, price doesn't really matter, because when you can connect with somebody on a deeper level that other people can't, price isn't even part of the conversation anymore. That's the really cool thing.